What's up, guys? Isaiah from Hot Tag Wrestling, and today I'm coming at you with a tier list of each wrestler in New Japan's G1 Climax 34. What I'm going to be doing is I'm taking each wrestler and I'm just going to be sort of going through the matches that they had and overall how their character sort of developed over the course of the tournament and putting them on a tier list. Now, the tiers rank from S to F, and I'm going to explain how I put each wrestler on each tier. So S tier, which is the very top, is what I consider to be a legendary all-time run in a G1 Climax tournament, a run that will be talked about as one of the greatest runs of all time. A tier was a very good run where they had mostly great matches and they were big players in the tournament. B tier was they had more good matches than bad and even a few great matches, but they never really were a serious competitor in the tournament. No one ever really took them seriously to win, or not all their matches were so great. C tier was they had a lot of good matches, but nothing ever really great, just sort of like a mid wrestler in the tournament. D tier was a pretty bad tournament, but they had a few sparks of greatness or goodness. And F tier, nothing good about their tournament, nothing to write home about. I would like to preface by saying these are not rankings based on what I think of these people as wrestlers. They're rankings based off of how they performed in this tournament. So there are some wrestlers that get in F tier that I think belong above that. And there are some wrestlers that get put into tiers where I personally would be like, I really want to put them higher, but they just didn't have a good tournament. So it is all based on how they performed in this tournament. If you like this video, please leave a comment down below letting me know what you thought of it. Leave a like, and please consider subscribing so you can see all the new content that I release. But let's go ahead and get into the tier list. Alright, so I figured we'd just go in order here. So we're starting with Callum Newman, who's a guy who I hadn't really seen a lot of prior to this year. The first match of his I ever saw was his qualifying match for the G1 against Kenta, and really, he's been all right, but nothing really that's blown me away. All of his matches have been good, but none of them really have been great. He reminds me a lot of a wrestler you would see on the indies, who sort of has a lot of cool, flashy moves, but nothing that really draws you in and no really dynamic character to become invested in. So I'm going to put him on C tier because, you know, I liked all his matches and they were fairly entertaining to watch, but nothing really blow away from him. Next we have Evil. Let's go ahead and put him straight into F. Evil, most boring guy of the tournament by far. No good matches, and in fact, actively drew down competitors who could have had good matches. Like, he had a match with... who did he have a match with that just sucked? Oh, Gabe Kidd. He had a match with Gabe Kidd that was just awful, and I love Gabe Kidd so much, so it was such a pain to see him have to compete in these less than matches, and that was the case with every Evil match. And I didn't watch a lot of them, to be honest, because why would you? But the ones I did watch, very not entertaining. Tetsuya Naito, also going in F. He's definitely not an F tier wrestler, but this year has just not been his year. I've seen him this year wrestle. He had the match at Wrestle Kingdom with Sonata, which was like fine but pretty boring. 2 bad matches with John Moxley, an alright match with Yota Tsuji, and then just a string of really dull matches in the G1. And what sucked most about Naito was he got a lot of the main event spots. So he was wrestling in like 20-25 minute matches pretty frequently, and they were all so excruciatingly boring. And I know Tetsuya Naito can be an exciting wrestler. I've seen it in the past. I've seen it in G1s in the past. But this year, he's just been on a cold streak, doing absolutely nothing. And he had no good matches in this tournament. Not just he didn't have any great blowaway matches. Not one of his matches would ever be something I would want to go back and revisit. And yeah, Bad. So F tier. Next up, we have Bolton Oleg. He's a guy who didn't really do a whole lot because he was always put in the opening match, and his matches only lasted about 5 to 10 minutes. But each one of the matches was sort of entertaining in the sense that you just get to watch a guy who's new do some big power moves, and a lot of his matches weren't great or even good for that matter, but I don't think they were supposed to be, and he did really have one blow away great match with Konosuke Takeshita. So I'm going to put him in D tier. Not completely useless, served a function in the tournament, though relatively his spot could have probably gone to someone else. He had one great match, that was about it. Next up is David Finlay. Finlay, I'm hovering between A and B for Finlay. He's definitely not as low as C, but not as high as S. I'm going to put Finlay in A. He made it to the semifinals, and he had a lot of good matches. Most of his matches were pretty good in the tournament, even outside of the semifinals in just the league stage. A lot of his matches were very, very good. And he had the kind of tournament that reminds me of tournaments from 2013 to 2018 where guys would just go out there and have great matches every night and you would just enjoy seeing them. Whenever David Finlay would come up on the screen, I would really enjoy seeing him because I knew I was going to be getting a good match. And he represented what a G1 Climax run should look like without ever getting to the next level of a legendary run that'll be remembered forever. Oh boy, Ren Narita. Ren Narita is probably one of my least favorite wrestlers in New Japan. When I first heard that he was sort of part of this collective of the Three Musketeers of New Japan with Shuta Umino and Yota Tsuji, I was like, whoa, I love Yota Tsuji, and I like Shuta Umino, so this is going to be awesome. And just from his first match, he never really connected with me. The first match I saw him wrestle was in G1 Climax 33 last year. And he didn't have any good matches then. And I was like, okay, I don't really know what we're doing here. And then just over the past year, he's reinforced that he's just a boring wrestler. And even, it's not like he's just boring. I think he is bad too. The moves he hit don't look like they connect and they look bad. So yeah, he is going in F tier. Never had a good match in the G1 tournament. He had a match with Yota Tsuji in the main event of one of the nights, and that was probably his best match, but even that was just fine. It was a good match. Hanare. I like Hanare a lot. But he didn't have the best tournament. He didn't really have a ton of great matches this tournament because he didn't really have a ton of time. And really, his performance in a lot of his matches was pretty much the same. If you watched one Hanare match in this tournament, you've probably just seen them all. There's one match I think he had a good match against Jeff Cobb, and that's the match you would want to go back and rewatch, and no other ones. So I'm going to put him in D tier. I do think as a wrestler, he's above D tier, but just in terms of this tournament, didn't really do a ton to impress. Zack Sabre Jr., eventual winner of the tournament, had a bunch of great matches. He's easily A tier. I don't think he ever reached F tier because I don't think a lot of his matches were blow away great. He obviously had two great matches in the finals and semifinals against Shingo and Yota. But I don't think his run ever hit S tier legendary status. But great matches, a lot of stuff that I would love to go back and rewatch. And he won the tournament, so strongly booked, someone you can get behind. Loved it. Shingo, another guy. Same case as Zach, going right in A tier. A great run in the tournament. And I feel unlike Zach really sort of came alive in the second half of this tournament. Shingo was just great throughout. He was amazing throughout the entirety of the tournament. And it was good because I wasn't really loving a lot of the stuff that Shingo did this year. He had a great match with Bryan Danielson at Forbidden Door, but it was like, it's one of those things where it was weird because it was like a great match, but not as great as you would have expected it to be, so you were a little disappointed. And he had a good match against Tama Tonga earlier in the year. That might have been at Wrestle Kingdom, I don't remember. But other than that, he hasn't really done anything to really impress me except for this tournament. And he just showed up every night and absolutely turned it on and had amazing matches every night. Next up, Shota Umino. Shota's definitely not going in A, but I think he can fit comfortably in B tier. I think that Shota had a lot of good matches and a few great matches in here, but just as a wrestler, he's not really someone who can carry a match on his own yet. Like when he would go up against some of the competitors that are in A tier, he would have great matches. But when he went against the competitors in F tier, he had awful matches, and that's just sort of shoot his way. So I do think he had more good matches than bad matches. But nothing other than he had a good match with Gabe Kidd. Outside of that, nothing really stand out amazing. So more good matches than bad, and really he was sort of progressing as a wrestler, and it was sort of exciting to watch him sometimes. So I think B is appropriate. All right, Takeshita. This was the one that I was struggling with the most of where to put him, because he's minimum A tier. But is he S tier? Is this an S tier run from Konosuke Takeshita? I think it is. I'm going to put Konosuke Takeshita in S tier. I think he came in as an outsider, and he really had a lot to prove. Not because people were wondering, oh, is this guy any good? Like, who is this guy? Everyone knew who he was, and everyone knows he's great, but this is a new stage for him to prove that he's great in the G1 Climax. And he really showed up. He had blowaway great matches the majority of the time that he wrestled. And when I did my video on the best match from each night of the G1 Climax, it was just like Takeshita, Tsuji, Takeshita, Tsuji, Takeshita, Tsuji, like back and forth of who had the best match each night. And if they wrestled on the same night, it was really a competition between those two for who had the better match. And I think he had, just every match he had was really good. Two great, some all-time classic matches. It was a fantastic run. So I don't think he would be anywhere but S tier. Next up, Yuya Uemura. Really good tournament for Yuya, actually. He had some great matches. His match with Takeshita was amazing, like one of the best matches of the tournament. And really, I was impressed by Yuya because I went into this tournament not regarding him very highly. I had seen his matches earlier in the year with Yota Tsuji. But I didn't really see enough of him in those matches to be impressed or to be a fan of him. But after this tournament, I'm definitely a fan of Yuya. He had mostly good matches, a few great matches, and his style really started to warm on me by the end. I really started to like his more back to basics style. So I'm going to put him in B tier. Very good tournament. Nothing great. Not one of the standouts of the tournament, I would say, even if he had a few standout matches. But the tournament definitely did a good job about making me excited to see what Yuya does in the future. Next up, Jake Lee. I'd never seen a Jake Lee match prior to this tournament. I had never heard of him other than I knew he wrestled in AJPW, and I think he won the champion of Carnival, or the Carnival of Champions, a few years ago. So I was expecting big things from him coming to this tournament, and just every match I watched, I was let down. I'm putting him straight in F tier. I think he had really bad matches, and there was it's not like boring matches, it's just he didn't do anything. Like, his main move was a knee to the gut, And in the couple matches of his I watched, it was just that's the same move he just kept hitting over and over again. And there wasn't a lot of substance to his work. I didn't see anything to impress me. He didn't tell particularly interesting stories in the ring. He was sort of akin to Evil in the sense that his style of match and his way of getting heat was slowing things down and taking the baby faces at a slower pace, which is just a boring way to wrestle. So I really didn't like him in this tournament, and I'm definitely not going to be seeking out any Jake Lee matches in the future. Next, Gabe Kidd. Gabe Kidd's one of my favorite wrestlers on the planet, so I'm going to try to be unbiased in this. He had a very good tournament, and he had a lot of great matches. His match with Shingo was my personal favorite match of the tournament, and he had some other good matches. Good match with Zack Sabre Jr., and a few others. He's always entertaining, even if he's having a bad match, like I said he had with Evil. He still was very entertaining in that match because he has just this charisma that flows through him. And whether he's playing sort of the anti-hero babyface or just the dickhead heel, he does an absolutely amazing job of it. He wasn't really booked too seriously in the tournament, didn't get that many points, but when he was out there, he always performed. I'm going to put him in B tier because unlike the three you see above him, Zach, David, and Shingo, getting a Gabe Kidd match is not a guarantee to have a good match on the card. It's sort of an up or down with Gabe Kidd whether the match is good. He can't really carry a match out of a bad competitor like Narita or Jake Lee or Evil. But at minimum, you can always be entertained by him in the matches. All right, next is El Phantasmo. This is a weird one because I really like ELP, and I feel like he had some great matches in the tournament. Great match with Takeshita, great match with Yota Tsuji, and a couple other good ones in there. But I feel like at some points in the tournament, it almost felt like he was moving in slow motion. Like when he wrestled Hanare, I was just like, this isn't good. Like his work style isn't good. And I don't know if it was trying to feed into the new character dynamic of him being sad that Hikuleo left him and left New Japan, but he had really, really good matches and then just really, really not good matches. So I'm going to put him in C tier. Like, as a wrestler, he's definitely above that. I just don't think he had a particularly great tournament. The highs were really high, but the lows were really low as well. So he's just, like, straight in the middle. Great-O-Khan. So when I was making my list of best matches, Great-O-Khan didn't appear on any of the lists. And, in fact, he did not have a single match in the tournament that I rated above 4 stars. However, I'm not going to put him in F tier. I'm going to put him one above in D. Because I feel like Great-O-Khan in the past has been such a boring wrestler, and I have been just so nonplussed by him. He's made no impression on me other than just being a big, boring bastard. But this tournament, I started to see a little bit more in him. He sort of started to adopt this more MMA-based style that was really fun to watch. Watching him throw dudes around and suplex them, it was sort of fun at points. And yes, the majority of his offense is dumb and doesn't look realistic, but there were flashes in the tournament, especially when he wrestled Shingo in the quarterfinals. There were flashes of a wrestler who I could like in the Great Khan. So I'm going to put him in D tier, even though he never really had like an amazing match or anything. He was trying something new, and I want to appreciate that just by moving him up a tier. Yota Tsuji, pretty much the same argument I made for Takeshita, I'm going to make for Tsuji and put him in S tier. He made it to the finals, and a lot of the matches he had were great blow-away matches. Like, he had, I think, 7 matches that were 4 stars or above in this tournament, where he had like 11 matches total. And he was booked in a main event spot more often than not. He was booked with conviction. He made it to the finals. He was really made by the bookers to seem like he is a serious threat in this company. And he himself showed that when he went out and just had great matches every night. So really, what more could you ask for from a G1 performance? He reminds me of like Kenny Omega back in 2018 or whatever year he won it. I think it was 2018. Where Kenny just went out and had great matches all the time and made himself the star of the company. And I feel like that's what Yoda did in this match, or in this tournament. So, yeah, S tier for him. Jeff Cobb. I really like Jeff Cobb as a wrestler, but recently I just have not been into him. It feels like really he's sort of lackadaisical in his work, and he really doesn't seem like he's that intent on having great blowaway matches or putting himself into a position to be taken seriously on the card. So I'm going to put him C tier. He did have some good matches on the card. Nothing I would really ever consider great. I don't know if he had a 4-star match at all. He had a pretty good match on must have been night 16 against Yota Tsuji, the last night of league matches. But really, a lot of his matches in this tournament were the same. And that's the same criticism I gave to Hanare, is that there just wasn't enough different about them in the tournament, and it was just every night he went out there and just had a Jeff Cobb match. And while that can be fun for a little bit, eventually it does get pretty boring. So they were all good, but nothing really great. Same cannot be said about Hiroki Goto. I'm putting Hiroki straight in A tier. I loved Goto in this tournament. Now, obviously, I was not watching when he won the G1 Climax in the past, back in like 2008. I was 9 and did not have a subscription to New Japan World, which probably didn't exist at the time. And I didn't really have a strong impression of him going into this tournament. I saw him last year in the tournament, but he never really made a strong impression on me there. And I've seen his matches in Bishamon with Yoshihashi, a lot of his tag team matches, and they've all been good. But honestly, if you asked me before this tournament, who's your favorite member of Bishamon, I probably would have said Yoshihashi. But Hiroki Goto just absolutely blew me away in this tournament. He was so good. And he went out there with a quest to have the best match every night. And I don't think he always got there. But he wanted to show that he could still run with the younger crew. And he did. He had a great tournament. I'm a big fan of Hiroki Goto right now. Whenever I watch him at a New Japan show after this, I'm always going to be rooting for him, even though he's probably just going to be relegated back to the tag scene. I'm super excited to see more of Hiroki Goto in the future, and really to go back and watch some of his stuff in the past. I was looking at his cage match, and it seems like he had a great match in the G1 in 2018 against Tomohiro Ishii. I might just go back and watch that entire tournament, honestly. But yeah, he had a great performance, and I was super impressed by him. Lastly, Sonata. Sonata is a guy coming into this tournament I didn't have big impressions of. He was one of those guys who it's like, yeah, they're good, they're just pretty boring. They're technically, yes, they are very good wrestlers, but I've never really seen charisma or anything new in the ring out of them to convince me that they're great wrestlers. And that changed in this tournament a little bit. He had 2 really great matches, one against Shingo Takagi and then another against Zack Sabre Jr. And when you're having matches against those guys, how can you not have a great match? Well, unless your name's Evil. But he just had really good matches. And like I said in my other video, they weren't carry jobs. He really held up his end of the action. And I'm really debating towards B or C tier, because I feel like he did have 2 really great matches, but I don't think he did a ton in his other matches. Like, he had a bad match with Naito. Bad match. I'm going to put him in B tier. If nothing else, because not only did he have good matches, but he also defied my expectations by having those good matches. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. Let's order them up a little bit. Just to, Hey, let's get wild. Let's have fun. So I think Yota Tsuji I'm going to put above Takeshita in S tier. I'm going to put Zack above David, and I'm going to put Shingo above David, but I'll keep him above Hiroki. Shudo I'll put towards the bottom, but then apart from that, I think that order's good. El Phantasmo I'll put above, and I'll keep that. I like Hanare more than Bolton, so I'll put him there. And Evil, Ren was definitely the worst. Ooh, was he the worst, though? Because Naito was bad. But Naito had more main event matches than Ren, so his matches lasted a lot longer. Nah, I feel like Ren's more boring. And Evil, he's got a few cool moves, so we'll put him there. So that is my list. That is officially my list. Yota Tsuji, best tournament run, followed closely by Takeshita. A tier, Zack Sabre Jr., Shingo Takagi, David Finlay, and Hiroki Goto. B tier, Yu Yu Uemura, Gabe Kidd, Sonata, and Shota Umino. C tier, El Phantasmo, Callum Newman, and Jeff Cobb. D tier, Hanare, Bolton Oleg, and the Great Okan. And then F tier, Evil, Jake Lee, Tetsuya Naito, and Ren Narita. And that's my list. Let me know what you guys thought down in the comments. Do you agree with all of my choices, or do you think some wrestlers should have been rated higher or lower? Let me know down below. If you liked the video, please consider leaving a like. It does help a new channel like mine to grow. And please consider subscribing, because that also very much does help. I have been Isaiah with Hot Tag Wrestling. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.